Hey, Grit Crusaders. I am Brooke Plack, and I am your host here today on the Grit Crusade. So, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. This is the place where we get real in the trenches of life, relationship, and business. All the grit stuff that people don't really talk about. And if you've been here before, welcome back. I'm glad you're here today. So, today's fun for me because we are wrapping up a 5-part mini series, my first mini series called Work Life Flow. So if you already listened to the first 4 episodes, then yay, thanks for being an avid follower. And if you're just jumping in on this 5th episode, it's totally fine. We'll link the extra episodes in the show notes so that way you can go back and check those out on the topics that, maybe resonate a little bit with you. So how we kind of got into this work-life flow topic is you've probably heard work-life balance or maybe work-life integration and what that looks like. And for me, it's more about a flow than a balance because we all have busy seasons and not as busy seasons. And so before we kind of go into the topic today, I want to talk a little bit about what work actually is. Okay. All right. So I was looking on Google, and so I think it's Oxford Dictionary that gives us the definitions on Google. And so work is actually defined as activity involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or result, or a task to be undertaken, something a person or thing has to do. So work is not always 9 to 5, right? For some of us, it's volunteer. For some of us, it's staying at home with children, raising children. Some of it's being a caretaker for a family member. Sometimes it's serving on a board or a civic organization or working at your church. So when I use the term work life flow, I want you to know that I'm thinking about all types of work here. Okay. So today's topic is home and family. Da-da. So some of you guys that may be listening, you're like, oh, this is a female podcaster. Home and family, that must be about, women. Well, it's not. Okay. So recently I was in a training in Tennessee, and I met this really great guy named Matt Walker, and I will link his website in the comments for you guys. And he's just a really amazing, energetic personality. He was a football player in Canada, and his family have been traveling the world for the last several years, or traveling the North America, I guess, in an RV. And so we were at dinner one night, and we were talking about this home and family concept. And Matt said, and this is just mind blowing, that the average father spends 7 minutes of intentional time with their children per week, not per day, per week. Like we can do better than that. And rather than having like this guilty feeling of like, oh my God, it's me, or maybe I'm working hard, I'm supporting my family. Like, what if we make decisions to change? What if we make decisions to create those intentional meetings, as Matt calls them with his daughters? Maybe it's okay to realize where we're at and know that we want to be more intentional about how we're living with our home and our family life. Okay, so just to go like back before we go forward, episode 1 was mind and body, and we talked a lot about sleep and how our mindset really controls everything in our life. Our second episode was about friends and our social life, and I was super vulnerable with you guys about where I struggle there. Episode 3 was about spirituality and how being spiritual and having a spiritual awareness in your life is totally different than just going to church. And episode 4 was one of my favorites, personal finance. I love that. I'm a numbers guru. And so today, like I said, we're hopping into home and family. Before we do, we're going to do our favorite segment on the podcast. So if you are new, we do a fun segment called Trivia in the Trenches. And so it's where I ask you a trivia question, or if I have a guest, I'll ask our guest a trivia question, but I don't give you enough time to look up the answer. So today's question's kind of quirky. All right, are you ready for this? Trivia in the Trenches. How many bins does a standard paperclip have? 3. Yay! I know you have to like kind of think of it in your mind, right? But here's some fun facts about paper clips. So there were actually many inventors like across the globe of paper clips, like near the same time. But John Voller of Norway is the one who patented it in 1899. And one of his early invention, John Baylor's, is the one that looks the most like the modern day paperclip. But in 1958, there was a survey of people's uses for paper clips. All right, you ready for this list? Paper clips are used as toothpicks, fingernail and ear cleaners. I don't know about ears. I feel like that just like hurts me hearing that. Fasteners for nylon, bras and blouses, tie clasp, clips, markers and games, chains, and childish weapons, which is true. I was a public school teacher. But I think one of the most unique uses of it is during World War II, the Norwegians wore paper clips as a protest against the occupation of the Nazis. Interesting. Like, I don't know, maybe like on their like little lapel or like their pocket or something. And the largest paper clip was displayed in Oslo, Norway in 1989 and made from iron. And it was 22 feet, 11 inches long and weighs 1,327 pounds. How about that? There's all your fun trivia in the trenches, paperclip facts. All right, so let's jump back into this topic of home and family and work-life flow. So I want to be very like upfront in saying that this work-life flow, home and family concept is all inclusive. Like I said in the beginning, this is not women, this is not men, this is not just for people with kids, this is not just for people with spouses. This is for everyone has a home, whatever you call it. Or if you're listening to this podcast, you most likely have a home, or maybe you're transitioning into or out of a home. Okay. And how our home makes us feel, how it lives and breathes around us can change the entire energy of what we put out into the world. So if you think about home and family, they're two separate concepts, right? Well, they're very intertwined because many times think about your holidays, family in your homes. Okay. If you have kids or dogs that you consider family, or a significant other or a roommate, those are in your house too. But as you start to look at your life, I want you to ask yourself, how is this working for me? How is the decor in my living room working for me? Is it sitting there because it's always been sitting there and it's dusty and old and not representative of who you are anymore? Or is it a really special memento and that Afghan is something that your mama crocheted, like I have across the room from me right now? You know, I have in my office where I also have my recording studio, I have a giant, like ridiculously, like probably 500 or 600 pound jukebox. And my husband hates it when I ask him to move it, but it was my grandpa Doc's. And it reminds me of times in the summer where we go to their lake house in Oklahoma and it on Lake Tenkiller. And it's just, I get teary eyed thinking about it because it was carefree. It was these moments where I got to see my grandparents that I didn't normally get to see. And it just represents everything that was cool about him. And it has a cool old records in it. And it's a little rusty, but it still works pretty decent. And nobody else wants that jukebox, but it's important to me. And so, what is it about your master bedroom or your kitchen that you have in your home that's inspiring you? Because your house does not need to be decorated like your parents' house or your friend's house. It doesn't have to be as big or as small or as dark or as light. It can be a representation of you. And you can start making small little changes to get in that direction. And so when you're coming home every day, if you're in a stressful, chaotic environment and there's clutter everywhere, take it from someone who knows you have too much shit. Okay. You need to get rid of some of your stuff because if we're constantly having to figure out storage and where to put all this stuff, like, are we actually using it? I mean, it is one day ever going to come, or is that something that you could easily replace? Okay. So I think organization and storage definitely have a huge place in the home. I'm a big fan of Marie Kondo's whole organizational theory, and we'll link those in the show notes for you. If you don't know about Marie Kondo, there's a little Netflix miniseries, and she also has a book, but it talks about looking at the items that you have and going, thank you. You've served me well. Now it's time for you to go. Just because that was your favorite t-shirt in high school doesn't mean that it has to stay your favorite t-shirt for the rest of your life. You can appreciate something that was and then let it go and move on. Okay. So looking at our homes, looking at the areas around you, how does it make you feel? Do you feel energized? Do you feel creative? Do you feel like you're getting rest in your master bedroom, or is it piled high with dirty clothes? Maybe you have too many clothes. If you had less clothes, you wouldn't have to wash clothes as much, or you would have to wash clothes more often, but you would be putting them right back on or putting them away because you wouldn't have as much. As Americans, and some of you will be listening to this outside of the US, and I love international listeners, but as Americans, I can speak from being here and from my world travels. We have more crap and more consumerism issues than anywhere in the world. And so when we're thinking about our homes, thinking about very intentionally, what are we bringing into our houses? My son's playroom gets totally overwhelmed and like amassed with toys when he has too many toys. If I haven't cleaned them out from the birthday before, well, you know what that's creating in his brain? Chaos, constant here, 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 here. And for a kid that's already hyperactive and works on focus and control and self regulation, like I can imagine that my lack of attentiveness, like, feeds that or fuels that, you know? And so, but I feel like so many times we get busy in the work and our work comes home. And where are those boundaries at? Where are we taking time to look at the space around us, choose intentionally to get rid of some of the things? Something that I learned, it's a little side note, something I learned in losing my mom in 2013 in a sudden tragic death is my house does not have to be a shrine to dead people. And I know that sounds harsh, but we get gifted all of these things from our grandparents and so this and like keep one small thing. Keep a piece of jewelry that meant something to you. But just because it was theirs, we don't have to keep it forever. We can pass it on to someone else, recycle it, reuse it, give it to another family member that you're not overwhelming with stuff. But like we don't have to keep everything just because it meant something to us. You have permission right here on this podcast today to let some of it go so you can let some new into your life. Because what about the things you pick up when you travel or a picture that your child made you? If you have to stack it on top of other stuff all the time, are you feeling joy from that? Or is it just feeling like more clutter? So the home is the first part of our balance here is what are we doing with that aesthetic area around us? And how does it make us feel? And is that working for you? And it's okay if yours is totally different than everyone else's because none of us are alike. And that is how God made us. Okay. So we're looking at our home that way. Now let's talk about our home when we're thinking about the time spent in our home. When we're spending time at home, sometimes you're going to have chaotic weeks. We're understaffed at work or we're having to finish a project late at night. But remember, we're not talking about a day to day balance here. We're talking about a flow. What kind of boundaries are you creating at home for yourself and your family in this flow? Are you putting your phone up for a while you're doing dinner and bath and putting your kiddo to bed? Are you putting your phone down and going outside and throwing the ball with your dog? Are you taking time to look at those plants that you love so much and name them or add fertilizer to them? And these are all things that are real in my life. Like nothing I'm like saying to you is like, look what I've already conquered because God knows I haven't. And some days we're all better at it than others, but I think we can all use gentle reminders. And those gentle reminders are what help like keep us encouraged and on the right track and making those tiny steps in the right direction of where we want our life to end up. Because if we are floating adrift, we'll never know the destination that we're going to get to. But if we have a destination, okay, that we want to get to, it's up to us to get there, but it doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to seem like such a big goal that we can't ever get there. But we can start making steps in the right direction. Maybe it's a new job or a new career path, but you don't have the credentials or you haven't cleared probation yet and you can't get that job yet, go ahead and start the training now. You could do that now so that when that moment is here and that door opens, you're ready. You made the preparation to get us there. Like Jesus didn't die on a cross without doing preparation and work first, right? So the path can be laid with us making those intentional steps. And so in our homes and in our lives, thinking about how we're letting work come into those situations and also making intentional decisions for turning off those moments where we're working or working on ourselves to just be and just spend the time with those that we love and our family. So, family, I think it's important to say that family looks different for everyone. And because your family doesn't look like my family, doesn't make one of us better or worse. If you have a male and female in the house with two kids and a shining dog, yay. If you have two females and no kids and no dogs and no plants, yay. If you live alone and you've chosen to be single your life, that's great too. There is no one right way to do home and family. Okay. And so don't ever let someone pigeonhole you into that, thinking that you have to be wanting to get married or you have to be, you shouldn't get married again or like it's your life. You get to pick. No one else gets to pick that for you. But When we think about our family, what does that ideal situation look like for you? Do you want to live in a city that's within driving distance of your parents? Do you not have parents alive, but you're fine being close enough on a plane that you can hop and see your friends because those friends are your family? You get to choose family. It's not all, you get to choose a spouse and call them family. I think you get to choose friends and call them family. You don't have to be biologically related to someone to call them family. And so your family and how you define it is up to you. But how are we making time for that in our lives? And we go back to the beginning of the episode talking about what Matt Walker had shared with me of 7 minutes is the average time a father is spending a week intentional time with their children. And I'm going, oh my gosh, am I doing that with Crew? Like, no, I'm not. I'm spending more time than that. Does that make me good? Does that make me bad? I don't know. What do I want for my relationship with him? And I think that's what we have to define is what you're doing's working? How are you defining success or healthy relationships in this instance? And how does that make you feel? And it's okay to take time to take stock of that and realize that even if you're like, hell, I don't know. I hadn't even thought about it. Well, now you can think about it while you're driving in the car. And then who is it that's in your life that maybe doesn't need to be because they're causing extra stress? And who is it you want to spend more time with? Because it's never too late to change. And it's never too late to want to make intentional decisions to have healthier relationships in your life and a healthier version of your ideal life. But I can guarantee you in this whole series of our work life flow, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this, is that you have to have a destination or you'll never get there. Because knowing where we want our sails to turn our boat and knowing what direction we want to head towards makes all the difference. Until next time.
You've been listening to the Grit Crusade podcast with Brooke Plack. Our theme song is Thunder City by Lunar Ray, licensed through Soundstripe. This podcast was produced by Luminate Media Group. Thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.